This episode is brought to you by Our Insurance Guy, a local family-owned insurance agency. Eric and his wife Christina are passionate about focusing on the needs of homeowners, farmers, and business owners in the London region. Focusing on service, putting empathy and trust back into insurance. Contact Eric and Christina at OurInsuranceGuy.ca for your no-obligation quote today. Alrighty, Peter, yet another friend of the show, and well, the advantage is he has to stay home for a week and change. So we were lucky to be able to actually nail down Doug Stacey, which is a tough thing to do usually, because whether it's Hockey Canada and Ontario Hockey League, athletic training with the Mustangs, Fowler. I feel like we could just we could just save Doug the time and just go through the bio and be probably through half hour, 45 minutes right there. But ladies and gentlemen, Stacey, good to see you, Stace. How's it going?
Good. It's nice to be home. It was kind of fun to go on the road, though. I mean, haven't traveled in a year and a half, so I've never been so excited to get on a plane.
Well, Texas, well, it's what, 3-4 hours away, something like that?
Yeah, and it is actually a short flight. It's only 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because then when I came home on Friday, I had an 8:30 flight, and with a 1 hour time change, we landed at 12:30, so I was home by 3 o'clock.
Oh, that's good.
For those who don't know, Doug was just recently down with the U18 men's hockey championship down in Texas, and it went pretty well, didn't it, Doug?
Yeah.
Well, you consider an unbeaten run unsuccessful, and then it was successful.
Yeah. And you never know with these tournaments, right? Because especially under 18, usually you only get whoever's available. This time they were able to get whoever they wanted, except there was no kids from the queue because the Quebec League wouldn't release anybody. And, you suddenly get thrown together and it's like wait and see, right? Like I've always said the teams that are successful are based on chemistry. And when the teams come together fast, they play well. If they don't come together, it doesn't matter how much talent you have, you're not going to be successful. So this was a team that had a ton of chemistry.
They did, they seemed to come together quickly too, because Dave Barr doesn't have, although he was a great coach in Guelph, he had time to work on his boys then, but he didn't here.
No, and you know what? I give that to Hockey Canada. Like Benoit Roy was in charge, and Kurt Keats was his assistant, and the two of them had everything set up from the get-go, because we actually quarantined a week before we left. So we flew on the 17th. We quarantined that was a Saturday. We quarantined on the Monday. Got tested the Monday, got tested the Tuesday, got tested the Thursday, but had to stay in quarantine. But we were legit on Zoom all day. So myself and the other therapist ran activation or workouts for 45 minutes. They did a lot of like chalk talk with the coaches in terms of the systems, and they did team building stuff. So, I mean, even before we even laid eyes on each other, we were together every day for a week. And I think that probably helped, because you started to get to know the characters of people in the team building. We'd have breakout sessions where we'd be in a small group on Zoom with like 4 guys from across Canada. And so it gave you a chance to kind of learn a little bit more about each other.
No, yeah, and the kids, they really did. They came together quickly. They had to, as you say, and they performed well. They really did. They performed extremely well. I mean, an unbeaten streak speaks for itself.
And you would have thought that these guys, A, had been playing all year, and B, had been a team together all year. The way they gelled, like, you could see it when we did stuff at the hotel. Like, because we were in a bubble, we didn't get to do a lot. So guys just hung out together, and we did everything together. And I mean, you would never guess that some players like Boudreau has not played a game since over a year ago.
Wow.
Like, he was phenomenal. Like, a lot of the Ontario kids went to Europe, but there were a bunch that did not. And you would never have guessed.
Why didn't the QM Quebec League jump in? Why didn't they?
I don't know, because I mean they are going into their playoffs, and I think they have to bubble. They have to bubble for their playoffs. So players that came back would not be eligible to enter the bubble. I think that might have been something. I don't know exactly, but the WHL is also in the same boat, and they released all their top players. So I don't know. I don't know what the situation was there.
Well, let's go right to the task at hand. How good is the Bedard kid?
Yeah,
Like,
two names
come
stuck out to me:
come
Shane
on.
Wright and Cam Bedard.
Well, Connor Bedard, yeah, like, oh my God, like just unbelievable. Like, and he was such a nice kid. Here's the best one. Okay, so as the tournament went on, I usually get a couple game pucks and get a couple players to sign it. So I always get the captain. So Shane Wright signed a puck, and so I got Connor to sign a puck for me, right? And so Connor signs the puck and he hands it to me. He goes, "Does that look okay?" And I was like, yeah. He goes, "I just came up with that autograph a month ago." That's
Well,
how young he is. He's 15 years old. He didn't have an autograph. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, I laughed. I was like, "Bud, you better get good at it because you're going to be signing millions of them." Like, oh my God, such a talent, so humble. And like, it's funny. I'm doing a talk on adolescent training, like working with teens at a conference the end of this month. And he's almost like the story I could talk about, except that you would never guess meeting him, looking at him, that he's 15 because he's so far advanced. Like he's like Sidney Crosby when I first worked with him. Like you're looking at him going, "You're 16. There's no way you're 16. Like look at the size of your legs, right?" Like no, he's quite a developed, mature young man.
And that's the same thing I've heard about Shane Wright too. Like people have said, especially his interview skills, his maturity,
Oh,
his everything sort of thing. I've got a couple friends that people I know that they're like working in and around the Kingston area and been around the team quite a bit, and they said, it seems to be that way with especially the exceptional status thing. A lot of people, same thing with Connor when he was exceptional status. People kind of said, Connor was a little quieter, but at the same point, it was always like the maturity, the skills, the body, the everything that goes with it. They're always just that. There's no way you're 15, 16, whatever it may be. I know even folks I've talked to about Wright, they've said they're like, really? He seems like he's a 19 or 20-year-old, but he's 15 turning 16 or 16 turning 17 sort of thing.
Yeah, well, Brendan Shanahan was the same way when he played here way back when, and I can remember in 2005 when we won the Memorial Cup. Sidney Crosby was the same, very mature for their age. They're only kids, but
and Doug's only worked with all of them.
Yeah, yeah, you have. Have you worked with Crosby?
What's that?
Have you worked with Crosby?
Yeah, I worked with him in the 2005 World Juniors. He was on that team.
World Junior. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the summer camp, and then obviously he came to London, so I got to visit with him there too.
Yeah.
But what's scary is the very first under 18 I did was in 2003, and guys from that team are retiring right now. Because I had Brent Seabrook on that team and he just retired.
Yep.
And Jeremy Colleton was there. He's now a coach in the NHL. Like I'm kind of going, I guess I am getting a little bit old, but I still got it. So that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, you've still got those medals to hang on to.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know, the Doug's house, he's got the nice little basement set up like most people do. There is a rule now in Doug Stacey's house about what does and doesn't go on the wall, and this is just success, doesn't it, Dougie?
Yep. I mean, you know what? It's like strive for the top. And so that's, and I've been fortunate to be with a lot of teams that have won either with Hockey Canada or with the London Knights, obviously. And so, yeah, if the team doesn't win, they don't make the wall.
Yeah, we should tell our audience that you have worked with the national women's team as well as the men's.
Yep. I've got 3 Olympic golds with the national women's team, 1 world championships with the women's team. And then I've got, this is my 3rd championship with the under 18 men's, 2 world juniors, and then the two London Knights championships.
Yep.
Just a little bit of hardware kicking around Doug's house. So for those who don't know, then that's the thing. We've got a bunch of things to cover, and this is the advantage of us doing a podcast instead of just Pete for years, obviously radio and TV. You might get your 2-3 minutes. You try and pack as much as you possibly can in. So this is why we were like, wait a second, podcast. We can actually talk to Dougie for a little bit, sort of thing.
Yep.
Take us back, Dougie. When did this become your path, sort of thing of I know it was you've played, you've been around, you've done a bunch of different things. When did it kind of go with I'm going to go the athletic training and physio and all that kind of route?
Well, it goes back a long way. Like, most physios were athletes themselves. And so I started off, I played football at Ottawa U. And when I finished, I knew that I wasn't big enough or good enough to go beyond university. So I was like, but I still love sport. And so I wanted to do something with sports. And so I was like, you know what? Like the training room was such a magical place. Like it was you're going in there thinking that your career's over. And then in a week, they've got you back playing. And it was a place to be yourself and to laugh and have fun. And so I was like, that's what I wanted to do. So I went back to school, did my physio degree, and then I focused on doing sport. And so focusing on doing sport is you do a series of exams to get your qualification as a sport physiotherapist. So I was doing my first round of exams and I was organizing courses. This is in 1999. And the person that I had teaching the course said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, nothing. And they're like, because the women's national hockey team has a camp in Orangeville. Would you be able to go and help out? And I was like, because she was asked and couldn't. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I went and helped out. And then it was like, then the next season, the therapist got sick and couldn't make a trip. And so they asked if I could cover. So I came back into Toronto, and I was living in Hamilton at the time. I drove into Toronto and I covered 2 more events. And then that summer, they called me to Calgary and said, can you come to a summer camp in Calgary? So they brought in a whole bunch of different therapists. And at the end of the camp, they said, okay, we really brought you in for a tryout to see how it was with you working in the women's environment. And the players and coaches really like you. How would you like to be the therapist this year? And that was 2000, 2001, where Danielle Sauvageau came in. And so the therapist who was before me thought she would be coming back to do the 2002 Olympics, but it's all about timing, right? Like I walked in the door, I did my thing, they liked it. And Sauvageau was like, no, I want to keep the chemistry. We won the world championship with this team. We're going to keep the same. And so they kept me for the 2002 Olympics. And then once I moved to Calgary for that Olympic year, I got to know everybody at Hockey Canada. And then that opened the doors to the under 18s, and that opened the doors to the World Juniors and et cetera. It's as you said, you get an opportunity, you got to grasp it and just do your best. And if you do your best, people notice, and then they find opportunities for you.
Like Bob Martin, very similar to Bob Martin.
Yeah, exactly. Like Bob was actually, when he first did it, he was looking to be just a volunteer, but like a host for the team. And so, it's like, I like to think I had I helped them out a little bit with it, because it's like, I called them up and said, listen, you got to take Bob. He's a security guy. He'll help you with a ton of stuff. And sure enough, Bob got in there and did such a good job that they're like, we need to create a position for you to have you around. And then now he's got almost as many events as I do. Like, I think it's fantastic. You know what? When you're given an opportunity, it's what you do with it that counts.
Exactly.
Like just because somebody opens a door for you doesn't mean that automatically means you get to stay. And so, Bob's a classic example that he got in and they love him and they give him every opportunity to be part of that team.
Every national, World Juniors and stuff like that, you see the guys getting off the bus. There's Bob making sure everybody's situated out the door the right way, on the path, sort of thing. I giggled with his. Obviously, we all know Colin Martin, his son. I sent him a text on the World Junior. I said, "Are you keeping a tally of how many times Dad's on TV?" He goes, "Yeah. If it was a drinking game, we wouldn't be doing so well right now." So, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. So,
absolutely.
So, and from that aspect, then Doug, you get the opportunity knocks, you keep going, sort of thing. Eventually you end up here in good old London, Ontario. And we're happy as anything to have you, because A, we love you, and B, it's advantageous for those of us who periodically fall apart, can call and say, Doug, what does this do? How many 7,000 texts a day do you get from random people going, this hurts, what do I do?
Well, that was a funny thing, is like, people will be saying, hey, Doug, can I stop by and see you? And I'm like, I'm in Dallas. And they're like, what?
Yeah, that was me, by the way. That was me.
Yeah. and, because everybody assumes that, we're on lockdown. I'm not supposed to be anywhere. So then, but I mean, I'd say I probably get at least 4 or 5 texts a week of people saying, hey, I need to see you. And so, I mean, this was a bit of a break for me, right? I went to Dallas. All I had to do was focus on one team, one group. Yep. Now I'm back, and they're already like, okay, are you back? Can we come see you? I'm like, well, no, I'm on quarantine. So I got a few more weeks. So you know what, when I come out of quarantine, it's going to be insane. You know that it's going to be crazy busy.
Yeah. It's like when you go on holidays and come back and have to answer all the emails.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The advantage is Pete just ignores the emails when he wants to.
I don't care.
Says, I don't know, it didn't work. So,
it didn't work.
So obviously the junior hockey time sort of thing between World Juniors, doing stuff with the Knights and that kind of thing, you got to work with all those guys over the years. And as you said, those guys are just, especially, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, the times when we were around sort of thing, and Pete many more years than I, you know, the Bo Horvats and so on and so forth of the world. I know those guys, especially, you know, they talk about their time in junior. They usually say one name, and then the next one is usually Doug Stacey. And so usually it's, you know, the Hunters did a lot for me, and man, if we didn't have Dougie, we wouldn't know what we were doing right now. You know, I know you've not only helped the kids when they're on the ice, but I remember you also being a co-op host for a Domi and a Horvat once. And I know that became an annual event for you to kind of not only, you know, look after the players, but also kind of teach them at the same time, sort of thing. That's a huge passion for you, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Like, I mean, that's what I said the reason why I became a physio was because of the therapist at Ottawa U. Like, it was just such an awesome environment, and that's what I wanted to recreate. And so, like, my training room at the rink, there's no player lounge, right? And so I know a lot of therapists are like, no, you can't hang out in the therapy room. I'm like, I want you to hang out in the therapy room. Because you know what? That's the place where you just unwind and become yourself, and you truly tell me things, right? And it's also got to be, it is a bit of a sanctuary. Like, some things they say, I'm not going to pass on, right? So that they trust me, that I'm going to get them better, that they trust me with the information they give me. But they also have to realize that sometimes they say things I need to say, the coaches need to know this. And so I'll try to get them to deal with it, right? But that's what I've always tried to foster. And so part of that is also, you know, doing some education stuff. So I love taking the co-op students. I had Christian Dvorak as well, was one of my co-op students. Like, it's pretty funny to look at who I had for co-op students, but you know, they get a better understanding of what I do and why I do it. And then they start to realize, wow, you do a lot behind the scenes to make them better.
Yeah. Dougie's co-ops could make up an all-star team, probably.
Yeah, they could.
What you say about the trainer's room is, especially to media, we know that the trainer's room is off limits. If there's a kid in the trainer's room, he's there for a reason, and that's he doesn't want to talk to media. And we all know that. That's the first thing you learn. If the guy's in the trainer's room, you don't talk to him. You leave him alone. Yeah,
it literally is a sanctuary. Like, that's their sanctuary.
And then the other thing too is, I know, Doug, even the times when guys are, and this goes back to it, and I've seen it a number of times, especially when you're working with various athletes, sort of thing. It's not just a scenario of what hurts, okay, let me fix it. It's what's going on, here's how to fix it, and then explaining to them at the same time. Because sometimes sometimes you don't have, especially when you're working with the under 18 kids or the junior kids, sort of thing. They're not exactly, knowing exactly what every part of the body and how it works and what makes it kind of tick, sort of thing. And how many times have you had a kid kind of go, light bulb moment of like, oh, so that's why that hurts, or that's why that hurts, this sort of thing.
And part of it too is when they haven't had it before, they think the worst. And so sometimes it's me going, that's nothing, don't worry about it, we'll fix that. And then they buy in, and sure enough, boom, away we go.
Yeah. I think your shining moment with the Knights wasn't in our home rink, but in St. Catharines, when the goalie for the St. Catharines club had his leg severed by a skate. That was sort of your shining moment, was it not?
Well, I don't,
Doug doesn't want to take credit for something.
No, most of my shining moments are stuff that you don't see. like, I truly believe my shining moments are what you were just talking about, where I work with the kids behind the scene to develop them, to fix them, to reassure them, to help them with their mental status, to get them so that they perform perfectly on the ice over and over again. I mean, my training is to deal with emergencies. And so that was a situation where my training kicked in and it was extremely successful, but it was by far a team thing. It wasn't just me.
No, I know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it was like the trainer, Chris Thierry, he was phenomenal in terms of he was calm. He was like, that's the thing I love. So when I get there, he's like, I was, I got there, saw the blood and said, have you located the bleed? He said, yes. I said, can you stop it? He said, no. And then right away we knew what we had to do. Right. And it was like, cut off the pants, get access, put a tourniquet on, stop the bleeding, and make sure the kid didn't go into shock. And so by staying calm and cool through the whole thing, like literally we got him on the stretcher, back of house, the ambulance was there, got him all set up, transferred him off. And I went straight back to the bench thinking the game was going to start. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why I'm saying it. To me, it's not a shining moment. I was doing my job. It's unfortunate, but I was ready to move back. And then the adrenaline wore off and it was like, oh God, that was a lot of blood.
Yeah, it was a lot of blood. And although you don't like to talk about it yourself, you did get a standing ovation, I think, the next time you were in St. Catharines, were you not?
Yeah. It kind of made me blush. I hid at the back of it. I hid behind the players, and the players are all like, Doug, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I don't do it. I like to talk, but I'm like, I don't like to be the center of attention, because they did a video thing to me on the scoreboard and gave me this beautiful frame picture of me on the bench. And I was just like, I was quite overwhelmed because I was just doing my job. Right. Like,
yeah, but the job was very important at the time to that young man.
Is this, and obviously the similarity there is obviously the Anthony Stolar situation, which brought on all the conversation of, requirement for, carbon socks and all that kind of stuff, sort of thing. Obviously the Stolar situation, were they similar, or is that just different areas?
No, different area of the body. Like Stolar's was very, very fortunate that where the laceration was, just cut muscle. And so, I mean, it did not bleed nearly as much. Like it didn't cut any veins. It didn't cut any arteries. It didn't cut any major, like he didn't cut it. Like, it was close to everything. Like, Stolar's was so fortunate. Whereas this other guy, he was cut through a major muscle. And so that just shows you how much blood is in the quadriceps muscles. And it got it nicked a vein. And so the vein was what was pumping out blood. It wasn't an artery. Different areas. Like, when I got to Stoli, it was like, it was just like, okay, compress. I was able to control the bleeding almost immediately. Like, it wasn't as emergent a situation. It wasn't about controlling shock. We just got it stabilized and got it repaired almost instantly.
Good.
And for those who know, and this is something that stuck with me from one of our conversations over time, is not only the calmness factor, but I know you've dealt with obviously a lot of talk of concussions and that kind of thing over the years. But I remember the one time you kind of said, there's if you think somebody's either hit their head or whatever it may be, there's a few key questions to ask people. But you remember you saying, don't get too high, just keep it calm. It was, tell me your name, what's the day, all those kind of key things, where are you, those sort of things. What are those key aspects? And for somebody, if they're they're dealing with something, I know everybody's at home right now, but things might pick up back in the near future, and if something happens, what are those key things that your layman person needs to be mindful of?
When I'm working with, like, because now that I'm at Western, I mentor like 32 student trainers. So I'm teaching 32 student trainers. And I'm always like, whenever you respond to something, the very, very first question you should ask is, can you tell me what happened? Because that simple question will answer a ton. Number one, are they conscious? Are their level of consciousness? Like, are they alert? Are they oriented? Because that is a leading question. Number two is, it'll tell you how aware they are about exactly what happened. Because usually you should have seen what happened. So you right away, the truth of what happened. And so if they go, oh, I tripped on a puck, and you're like, are you kidding? You got ran from behind. Right away that you got to assess a little bit more in terms of what's going on. And sometimes, like, this is the funny thing with Stolar's, is that when I got to him, he'd spun completely. His helmet flew off. and the blood was like around his head, right? So I thought it was his head, because heads bleed a lot. They've got lots of vascularity. It bleeds. And so I was like right away going, Stoli, tell me what happened. And he's holding his head and he goes, it's my leg. And I went, okay, what? He goes, he cut my leg. And so right away, then I went to the leg, because I thought it was his head. Like it was like this pattern, like a halo around his head, but it had come from his leg, but he'd spun. So that's why that leading question right away led me to where I needed to be almost instantly. And so that's where I always start. And then you get into the basic questions of, do you know what day it is? You know, roughly what time, what day of the week, you know, where are we? What's the score? That is all helps you in terms of gauging orientation. But I always say that first question is going to give you so much information that leads you to where you need to go. And it calms you down, because it lets you know instantly where you're going to start. Yeah. If you get to a situation and you don't know where to start, that's when you panic.
Yeah.
If you know automatically, this is where I start, then you move off. You move from that.
Have you ever been in the panic mode?
No.
So
and I don't want to brag, but it's like, I don't know. It's just my nature that I don't know. I've been in situations where the person in charge has gone into panic mode, and I've legit just taken over. Because it's like, it doesn't matter. Even if I don't know what to do, if I panic, I sure am never going to be able to do what I need to do. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned over like 30 years of doing this, is that just be calm, right? I mean, I've never had to deal with a heart attack or somebody that's not breathing. Like, that might take it to a whole nother degree, right? But when you get to someone and you go through your ABCs and they're there, well, that takes a lot off your plate. And now it's like, okay, let's focus on what else we need to do.
Now, you mentioned it a few minutes ago, you've recently made the move to a new team. You know, you're always with the red and white team. You were with the green and gold team for a while. I know I was lucky enough to be working at the purple and white team when all of a sudden an email came across to me and said, we have a new athletic therapist. And I went, who is it? And they went, do you know Doug Stacey? And I went, do I know Doug Stacey? That just made my life easier. You know, take us through this kind of a, you know, new chapter. Cause I know you'd said, you know, over your career, you've done some things and then you said, okay, that chapter's good. Now we're going to move to the next thing, sort of thing. Is this just the next chapter sort of thing?
Yeah. Like it you know what? It was like, I love the Knights. And I love the players. I mean, obviously, that's why I went back into this under 18s. It's all players that they know. Yeah. And I love hockey, but I love development. I came into the Knights. When I came into the Knights, I was helping Branks. I did whatever Branks needed me to do. And then when he left, there was an opportunity to take it to another level and to take it to more high performance. And so that's what I did. I came in and it gave me an opportunity to take everything that I'd learned through Hockey Canada and start to apply it to the Knights, bring in more sport nutrition, work closer with strength and conditioning, work more on prevention, bring the man games down from simple injuries that could be dealt with, you know, treat everything in-house so that we had better control. And raise the level of training. And that's exactly what happened. And then when I was approached by Western, essentially that's what they wanted me to do. And when I went, I was like amazed at how much of an opportunity there was at Western. Western is viewed as such an athletic school, and yet they still need a lot of work in the high performance area, and yet they've got all the pieces in place. And so I know it was a pandemic year, but it gave me a year to actually work with a lot of the coaches, finding out what they need, looking at the different programs, finding out what they need, and putting a plan together for the next few years that could help develop that. Like, will I be there forever? No. Like, you know, I'm in my 50s now. So it's like, I like to slow down.
You're just a youngster. You're a youngster.
I know. I'm talking to the legend. I know. I'm talking to Pete. It's like everything I say, Pete's going to go, yeah, right. You got a long way to go. But there was just so much opportunity. And the biggest thing is it gave me an opportunity to actually teach. so that I teach kinesiology. I teach in the 3rd year and the 4th
Yeah.
year alongside Dave Humphreys, who was a student of mine years ago and who's a fantastic sport physio. So the two of us really get to bring our experience and knowledge to a young group and watch their passion. Like, I don't know how many letters like reference letters I did this year for my students applying to physio school, and I was just so excited about it. And maybe the opportunity for them to come back as fellows as well. So I do like the mentorship and the teaching, and it gives me a chance to step back and let the students do a lot of the day-to-day stuff that I did, like I did with the Knights, and I can focus on things that I'm really good at. So
which is most things, but I can see where
I'd argue all things, but that's just
no.
I can see where you'd get a kick out of the teaching. That you're teaching young minds, how to do this type of work.
Well, I mean, it was the passion of the trainers when I was in university that led me to this. So I want to give back, and I want to help develop the passion so that if somebody suddenly goes, this is what I want to do, then I'm there to facilitate. I don't hide my abilities. I don't hide what I know. I believe in sharing it because it's not for me, right? It's for athletes. It's to help other people to become better, whether you're an athlete or another therapist. And so it was just it was timing, right? Like in my life, things just happen at the right times. And this just happened at the right time, right? Like, it was legit. Like, the OHL season basically got canceled and Western came looking at me, and I was like, that's the writing on the wall. It's time.
Yeah.
But I haven't burned any bridges with the Knights. Like, trust me, you'll still see me on Friday nights at games. Like, I can't stay away. Right, Pete?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I won't be there this year.
Now, Doug, how much fun is it for the fact that you said it, you love hockey, you've been around hockey, you've loved it for so many years, but now university environment, and I think you've said this to me before, but you've been involved with women's hockey, you've been involved with men's hockey, you have a love for football, you've been around basketball. Now you get to be involved with all of them, sort of thing. Is that the enjoyment of the challenge too? Because it is different sports, different activities, different things, different injuries, different all over the map.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. It's new challenges, right? Like, honest to God, I got to a point. With hockey, I used to laugh. It's like they'd come in, they'd be like, and I'm like, it's this. Don't worry about it. I'll fix it. Right? Whereas now they come in, and I'm like, okay, explain to me again what you did. All right, let's go through this. It's like, okay, let's look at. All right, here we go. This is it. We'll work on this. Like, now I'm developing my pathways through all these different sports, including rowing and figure skating. Like, it gives me a chance to work with all these different sports that like. The human body is the human body, right? But it's the excitement of the sport and analyzing the sport that I'm enjoying again.
There's not many sports left on the bucket list, is there, Dougie? Like, I mean, especially when you get into a university environment, you just say you can go ultimate frisbee, fencing,
Well, that's exactly it. Western's got over 20 sports. Like, I've gone from one sport, 25 to 30 athletes, to over 20 sports and 1,200 athletes. And I want my finger on the pulse of all of it. Like, I truly do. Because I don't want somebody to be ignored when we have the potential to make them better.
Yeah. Now, is there any one sport more difficult in your line of work than another? I mean, you mentioned fencing and figure skating. Would that be not as difficult as football?
I think football is going to be my bigger challenge because you get a lot of the injuries. Like I had tons of injuries from football, and there was zero contact, right? Because it's the muscle injuries. It's okay, we're not doing anything, and then all of a sudden we return to practice, and guys trying to sprint full out. I've never treated so many hamstring injuries in my life because you don't see a lot of those in hockey. And then you start adding the contact component to it, right? And I mean, there's so many different things. It's going to be interesting to see what I see.
Yeah. How much are you looking forward to being on the sideline of a football field again? I know you got a little bit of a taste this year with the training that was happening, sort of thing. But when it comes to early September, Western versus Queens on a Saturday afternoon, the breeze is flying at TD Stadium, sort of thing. It's how much are you looking forward to, especially as you said, when you started out working with the football team back in the day? That's going to be a little bit of fun.
Didn't you train Foodie's father, Liam Foodie's father? Yeah.
So when I finished at Ottawa U in 1990, I registered with CADA, with the Canadian Academy of Athletic Therapists,
Mm-hmm.
and so I got hired as an assistant with the Ottawa Rough Riders in 1992, but I just realized as a physio I'd have more opportunity, so I applied to physio school, and so I got hired the summer I got hired by Ottawa. I also got accepted into physio school, so I worked with them that year. Then I started school in the fall, and then obviously never returned. But Liam's dad was a free safety with that team. Yeah, so I remember when we drafted Foodie, I was like, how many Foodies can there be in the world? And then sure enough, when Sean showed up, I was like, stop it. Now again, feeling age, it's like, you start treating the kids and guys you work with, you're like, holy smokes.
And then his mother, Foodie's mother, was an Olympic athlete for us in the 4x100.
Yep. I mean, I've met her a number of times. I obviously never worked with her, but
no, France Garrow.
Because that's where Sean started. He was a track athlete at York.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was he did double. He did track and football because he was just fast.
Well, and Liam had some OFSA records coming into his draft year, even for a couple of things in track and field sort of thing. So, surprise, he skates well.
Yeah.
Are there a couple of guys over the years, that are memorable sort of thing, even for personality? And obviously we talked about a couple of situations of, key injuries sort of thing with a couple goaltenders there, but are there kind of those personalities over the years that just keep kind of coming back and sending you messages and,
where do you start?
we got time.
No, that's like asking Pete that question. If you ask Pete that question, the show would be 2-3 hours long with 1 minute dedicated to each person he knows, because he knows thousands. So you know what? I'm going to go a couple of key ones just because they had a bigger influence in general. Max Domi for sure.
Yeah.
Simply because, just monitoring, getting into the whole world of a diabetic athlete was very challenging, and with his nutritional issues, but the thing is that I had him come to my house just to get away from, just for a change of pace, because I knew what his diet was, I knew what I could feed him, and just so he came to my house for an Easter, and my daughter was little, and the two of them did Easter egg hunt for like 3 hours in the house. And to this day, my daughter's now in grade 9. She's, this was 8 years ago. She's now 14, 15 almost. And she's number 16 for a reason. Like, she loves Max. And so, just before the lockdown last year, I got a chance to take her to a game in Buffalo. Max gave us tickets, and he came up and saw her afterwards. And like, she was wearing her Max Domi shirt. Like it's so cool to see that. And all of her little hockey cards from the Devilettes say Max Domi on the back. Like, that's her love. And, and then when he wrote his book, he wrote about her in the book. And so that was a big thrill for her as well. So, but I mean, even at the U18s, Matthew Tkachuk was texting me because he was watching the game, and he's like, "Oh my God, Dougie, your arms are getting tiny," and he's just chirping me. I mean, he's American. He's watching the Canadian game, and Mitch Marner, of course, and oh God, there's so many over the years. Like, for the record, I still see Dave Boland on a regular basis. I still see Corey Perry when he's home will pop over. And I mean, there's even, some athletes that I didn't work with directly with the Knights, but I see. And then I got texts from a bunch of the women, like Cassie Campbell and Cheryl Pounder, Tessa Bonhomme, that were all part of Olympic teams I worked with, because the boys love it when I bark, right? Like, I bark at them as they're going out to the ice. And when we were on the ice, they're passing the cup around. They're like, "Give us a bark." So I gave a bark, and all of a sudden my phone blew up because all my players, like the girls, are all like, "I heard you barking." And they just, like, it's little things like that you kind of love, right?
My favorite is it didn't matter where you are in any arena. Obviously, Pete and I would have spent a fair amount of time in Bud Gardens, but you knew full well when pre-game warm-up was happening on the upper mezzanine at Budweiser Gardens, because you could hear Dougie pretty much anywhere in that entire place, because you knew full well, and it was like, Oh, pregame warm-ups on. I hear Doug.
Yeah, what's funny is, well, it's unfortunate I couldn't do my typical warm up with U18s because it involves too much closeness. Like everything we had to involve social distancing. So our warm-ups were the boring warm-ups with lines so that we could social distance. I wasn't able to do my jump around with insanity, which is too bad because that always gets them absolutely fired up out of their trees.
Are you going to cast away the Team Canada shirt, or are you going to wear it again?
Oh no, I think I'll keep this one. This one just says Canada. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, what are you what's next? What's next with Team Canada? You got anything planned, or do you know?
I didn't expect this one. Like literally, it was like maybe a month ago or 5 weeks ago. I got a call from my friend Kevin Elliott, who was the trainer for the World Juniors, and he's with Charlottetown. But him and I are friends. Like we talk all the time. He called me and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I said, "Well, I got another week of teaching and then wrapping things up." And then he goes, "You want to go to Dallas?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, I'm going with the under 18 team and I need another therapist." He goes, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Are you for real?" And so it's funny. So then I was like, well, I got to check. I got to check two places, right? I got to check with the boss at home and the boss at work in that order. And naturally, as soon as I came home, I said, "Shelley, like, I just got asked to do under 18s." She goes, "Of course you're going." Like that. It was like, I was like, perfect. You still support me doing all my travel with that. And you know what? The Fowler clinic was the exact same. I went and said, "Hey, listen, I was just asked." And they're like, "Of course you're going." And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, I didn't expect it, but at least I know that I've got support still, both sides. That if anything comes up, I'll probably get an opportunity to travel again if asked.
Good.
How crazy was it to, after all this time of, as you say, junior hockey season, you're going how many nights a week, you're going to the rink in the morning. I know you're still doing some stuff, you're still connecting with, student athletes and that kind of thing, even though, pandemic time and training's been changed completely, sort of thing. But how much fun was it to kind of scratch that itch of jump on a plane or jump on a bus and go with a team and be around and, games and all that kind of stuff? Did it seem almost like it's been like 10,000 years since it happened, sort of thing?
It did. Like, it was so much fun. And I mean, think about it. We were in a bubble, so it's not like we had a chance to go out and do anything, right? So going to the rink, I could stay at the rink all day, right? And it was a little community rink, but it was a nice community rink. And it was so funny because we started making friends with all the people, like, because they sanitize that rink like crazy. Like between practices, they would completely sanitize the benches. So we'd be talking to the person sanitizing the bench, and oh, lo and behold, she's from Regina. She came to school in Texas and still lives there 20 years later. Then we're talking to the rink guy that's kind of like the event manager. He's from Woodstock. And he's same thing. He went to school there and he stayed. And then outside, because it didn't have a restaurant in it, they brought in a restaurant, like classic Texas barbecue, had this big smoker out the back. Needless to say, I'm a bit of a meat guy, so it's like I made friends with them right away, and they were from Calgary. And so it was like we were surrounded by Canadians, so it felt like at home. And you love this, like Hockey Canada legit travels with Tim Hortons coffee. So guess what? All these Canadians, when we got there, we would fire up a big pot of coffee, and right away we'd be like, "Hey, do you want a coffee? You want a coffee?" And they're like, "Oh my God, I haven't had a Tim's in ages," right? And so, and also the two physicians that were in charge. So there's one physician in charge who is from Fargo, North Dakota, at the one rink, and the physician in charge at the other one was from the Mayo Clinic. Both of them did their fellowship at the Fowler Clinic with Pete Fowler.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm talking the smallest world ever. So again, it was fun to be at the rink because we'd hang out with these guys, and we're like giving pins to them, and the people that really helped us out, we gave them shirts, and we had Tim Hortons coffee going all day. Like, take as much as you want, we'll just make another pot. And we got treated like gold. Like it was a home event, right? Like it was amazing how, but that's the Canadian way, right? Like that's what we're always taught, is that you respect everybody that you work with, and it comes back 100-fold. So it was funny because then all the Canadians would come and talk to us because originally they're told not to, but we're like, are you kidding? Come and talk to us. Like, we want to be here. We'll hang out.
Did you get along with the guys on the other teams?
You know what? You always get along with the trainers of the other teams because you're in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I've got a Belarus hat here. I didn't really need one, but the therapist for Belarus was a young kid, and he's like, oh, I want a Canada hat. So he'd come up with his phone, speak into his phone, show me the translation. So I got him a hat, and he was over the moon. And it was funny because we traded after we beat them, and he was just shaking he was so excited that I was going to give him a hat. And I'm like, don't worry, I don't need a hat. And he's like, no, we have to trade. So I was, all right, I'll take your hat.
It's like a jersey swap, right? Is that the pins and the hats and shirts sort of thing? Yeah. Is that the trainer and the staff way of coordinating those kind of things?
Oh, exactly. Like, it's like they do, but it just shows how big Canada is. Like, every team come and talk to us because it's like, we are ranked number 1 in the world. And so he thought it was so cool to get a Canada hat. I never saw the US team at all. And I don't think they were that good at this term, but I never saw them at all. But Sweden was right beside us, and the Swedish guys are always awesome. The Finnish guys are like Canadians. Like, honest to God, they're so down to earth. They're fun. The Russians usually don't talk to us, which is kind of funny. Either do the Czechs. They really don't like us. But everybody else, it's like, we're one big happy family.
The last couple of times you've seen a Russian team, things have gone decently well for our red and white group as opposed to their red, white, and blue group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the last time I was close to a gold medal was in Buffalo, and we lost to the Russians, and we were up 3-0 and we lost. Yeah. Remember?
Oh,
so I'm always hesitant when it comes to the Russians. Yeah. And the Russians beat us, and the Russians beat me for the bronze medal in Ufa, Russia.
So, you didn't want bronze anyway, Dougie.
I didn't want bronze. Yeah. Canada does not play well for
somewhere.
Yeah. Canada does not play well for bronze.
And for those who don't know, if you're having any sort of issue with your upper and or lower back, and it's a Friday night, and you really have a tough time doing things, don't bother with the Advil, don't bother with the Tylenol. I just look for a Doug Stacey bear hug. How many times, Stace, did I walk down and tap on the door and go, I know you're busy, but let me know when you got about 15 seconds. I got a upper back thing. Doug just, the wrap around and away you go. I think honestly, when they said you were coming to Western when I was working there, I was like, I'm excited. I love seeing Dougie. I love knowing him. I'm really happy to know that I can get my back cracked if need be. How many of those folks do you have on the list?
Oh, good God. It's called the Dougie hug. You know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorite things in the world.
Let's see. Probably when I was in Dallas, probably like 10 or 12 a day.
Something doesn't feel right, Dougie. Dougie hug.
Yeah, the staff loved it, right? Because it's like, Doug, you gotta give me a hug. Okay, pick you up. I think it's just because I can pick him up.
Well, hey, Doug, it's been a lot of fun for me. I wish you very well. All the best in your new job up at Western, and we'll be seeing you around somewhere.
Oh, absolutely, Pete. I'll be around. Happy to talk to you guys anytime you want.
We will. I'm sure there's be a few things we'll probably bug you about. So best of luck. Congrats on the medal. Just surprise, another one to add to the wall. I think the only advantage is now that you've got a little bit of time. Now you've got to try and do some decorating and figure out where it goes, right?
Yeah, I gotta find some space.
Dougie, this has been fun. Thanks for this, and we'll bug you soon.
Okay.
See you, Dougie.
Take care.